After Jesus' resurrection, the disciples came to worship him on a mountain. And Jesus told them, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit." This is the Great Commission, our call to evangelize the world. It's a unifying priority among a group of Christians called evangelicals.
When you have a movement that is broad, has different theologies, different trends, multiple denominations, where do you find unity? Classic example, Billy Graham.
Man cannot be saved by earning his way, by working his way. For by grace are ye saved, through faith, and that not of yourselves. It's the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. And if you haven't come by faith to the foot of that cross, renouncing your sins, I don't care who you are, what you are, you'll never be in heaven.
Billy Graham's message and ministry, especially in his early years, brought together in partnership various strands of the evangelical movement by partnering on a clear, simple gospel message. That meant that doctrinal distinctives were set aside as secondary, tertiary, or maybe absolutely unimportant. Instead, there would be an agreed upon, simplistic gospel.
Billy Graham's massive crusades brought the gospel to millions of people, and it communicated loud and clear that the last thing this dying world needs is to get caught up in doctrine.
Concern for evangelism is always a good thing, but this evangelistic concern has been propelled in a way that says, let's be as little offensive to everybody as we possibly can. Let's demand as little as we possibly can of people, and let's entertain them as much as we possibly can to try to bring them in.
There was a shallowness to the movement that at first maybe people thought would be an appeal to those who were looking for something that seemed relevant or able to meet their felt needs, but over time became very clear that the cure was perhaps even worse than the disease.
You don't know. You may only be 5 no's away from your yes. Or who knows, maybe the next person you meet will be your yes. The next college you apply to will be your yes. The next time you resist the temptation, you'll break the bad habit. It'll be your yes.
TV would have a huge impact upon the evangelical movement. We can especially see this in the tele-evangelists who emphasized a health and wealth gospel. As a result, millions of people were reached, and vast sums of money began to flow into the evangelical movement.
Well, our income last year was over $100 million. So there has been over $1.3 billion come into this ministry since it's went into operation.
Anything was acceptable, as long as it was done in the name of reaching the lost.
Amen. I am a billionaire because the assignment that the Lord gave me, He said, I want you to begin to confess the billion flow. Because as long as you were in the million flow, you were winning millions. You go into the billion flow, you win billions.
Corporate structures, marketing strategies dovetailed very well with the church growth movement. And as a result, this came to define evangelicalism, especially in the 1980s and the early 1990s.
Following the culture, there's been an inward turn in evangelicalism, so that, in a sense, every person is their own definer of what truth is. There's no longer any objective agreed basis as to what constitutes Christianity.
We have to understand that anything that we build that is not founded upon the Word of God, no matter how great our intentions, how sincere our motives, if it's not founded upon the Word of God, it's a house of cards.
We need something deeper. We need something more thoughtful. We need something more biblical.
Young men and women became very interested in theology that is substantive, that predates modernity. A strong, deep-rooted understanding of Scripture. And the doctrines that emerge from Scripture through careful exegesis and reflection. Calvinism became very attractive to a new generation.
He raised us up when we were dead in our graves. He bought us with the blood of his Son. Opened the floods of his grace. He washed us clean, then wrote his name on our hearts. He's claimed us as his daughters and sons. Nothing can change who we are. There's nothing better than to know we belong. We've been adopted by the Father of love. Our brother suffered on the cross in our place. We are kids of grace. 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 We are kids of grace.
This is the story of a generation. My generation. Against all odds, we fell in love with an old and often misunderstood theology. Call it a revival, call it an awakening. We called it a resurgence. We were young, we were restless, and little did we know, we were about to be reformed.
I grew up thinking that Christianity was generically connected to Jesus and what he'd done, but that was really just something you did for conversion, that you'd pray the sinner's prayer.
This is my friend Andrew. He was a typical church kid in the 90s.
The parents come, drop off their kids. The kids need something to do for an hour and a half while the parents go off and do adult church. And so what you end up doing is kind of trying to entertain them.
Youth ministry has increasingly completely segregated the youth from the rest of the church in a way that I think is indefensible from the Bible.
You had to memorize Bible verses, and you got badges on your t-shirt and all these things. You got prizes and whatnot. And so I memorized Bible verses, but I never quite understood why I was doing it.
We tell our children, those aren't important conversations to have. It's not important for our kids to understand the why and the how from the scriptures, to think about these deep and hard things.
The parents were pushing them to go to Ivy League schools, to achieve the very best test scores they could. They were capable of so much, but for some reason, church was kept very simple and watered down.
Young people are not seriously challenged to discipline themselves and to be self-sacrificial in their service to Christ.
Because we've approached things in that way, we are reaping the rewards for it.
Because I never got the why, I eventually started to hate the church.
As the culture has become generally more hostile to Christianity, as there's less traction with cultural Christianity and a nominal faith commitment, there's no real cultural cachet from just raising the Christian flag. Then you're more willing to say, what are we really about here?
They went to the internet to go looking for answers, and they found people engaging, interacting. Two alternatives sprang out. The first was the emerging church. They had leaders like Brian McLaren, of course.
Brian McLaren, whose theology was very liberal and revisionist. I think there's this feeling that in some ways Christianity has distorted Jesus and distorted the message of Jesus. And so there's this sense that, boy, we wish we could get to the bottom of what Jesus' message really was about.
The idea was if we don't change our theology, then the church is going to be lost.
Many in the emerging church were communicating that our biggest problem is that the historic Christian faith is simply outdated.
What gets subtly sort of caught and taught is that Jesus rescues you from God. But what kind of God is that we would need to be rescued from this God? This is why lots of people want nothing to do with the Christian faith. They see it as an endless list of absurdities and inconsistencies, and they say, why would I ever want to be a part of that?
Option one was to say that we've been too dogmatic for too long, and it's time to tear up the foundation and start over from scratch. But there was another option.
If what I tell you today is not true, I'm in a great deal of trouble and have every right to do this with fear and trembling, because I will stand condemned before God. But if what I tell you today is true, then you're the one with cause for fear and trembling.
I've never spoken much about the shocking youth message. We didn't give it that title. We didn't even put it online.
Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven will enter. Why am I a Christian? Because there was a time in my life when I prayed and asked Jesus Christ to come into my heart. I want you to know that the greatest heresy in the American evangelical and Protestant church is that if you pray and ask Jesus Christ to come into your heart, he will definitely come in.
When he was talking about people being in church but not having a relationship with the Lord, people were cut to the heart.
What you need to know is that salvation is by faith and faith alone in Jesus Christ. And faith alone in Jesus Christ is preceded and followed by repentance. A turning away from sin, a hatred for the things that God hates and a love for the things that God loves. A growing in holiness and a desire not to be like Britney Spears, not to be like the world, and not to be like the great majority of American Christians, but to be like Jesus Christ. I don't know why you're clapping. I'm talking about you. I didn't come here to get amens. I didn't come here to be applauded. I'm talking about you.
We started getting emails and things from people. I remember one was from Australia, Japan. It's like in one day we started getting these emails.
We would have people just calling up our church and saying, what do you think about Paul Washer? Do you like Paul Washer there? That sermon changed their lives.
This was a very different kind of teaching, as if the Bible was plain and authoritative, and it caused us to ask very different questions. Was there more to salvation than praying a prayer or walking an aisle?
You guys, the Bible says if anyone is in Christ, he's a new creation. The old has gone and new things have come.
And do I really understand the gospel at all?
So they didn't go looking for Reformed theology, they went looking for answers and found their answers through Reformed people and then were attracted to that theology.
Young Restless Reformed was a very deliberately chosen phrase to be able to express the different dynamics of this movement. One, that it was young.
He goes, where's my rose? Where is it? Where's my rose? And you know, some kid came up, the rose is just completely jacked up, it's broken, the things are off, the petals are broken, and he lifts it up, and his big crescendo, I mean, his point is to hold up that rose and go, now who would want this? Who would want this rose? And I remember feeling anger, like real, legitimate, I want to hurt him anger, and it was all I could do not to scream out, Jesus wants the rose! That's the point of the gospel, that Jesus wants the rose.
Two, it is restless, meaning they are very concerned about some negative trends within the evangelical church, particularly the emerging church and its theological revisionism. And then on the other hand, the seeker church, and it's getting rid of any theological distinctions and its failure to teach systematically through the scriptures, but then also Reformed.
A Reformed resurgence has always been the young, restless, and reformed. And that's the way it was in the Reformation. They were meeting at Cambridge to discuss this. Luther was a professor at University of Wittenberg. Calvin's converted in college. It's always been this way.
The motto of the Reformation was post tenebras lux, out of darkness, light.
The story of Calvinism begins 500 years ago in one of the most important events in history, the Reformation.
The Protestant Reformation came about by the confluence of numerous developments that led to the possibility of throwing off the yoke of Roman tyranny, Roman tradition, the encrusting of the gospel with all sorts of man-made debris.
One of the major problems with Roman Catholic doctrine is that it quantified sin and quantified grace. Luther's going to say, if the problem is my sins, well, I'll just white knuckle it to overcome my sins and store up enough merits.
If anyone was going to be saved through monkery, Luther said it was he. But of course, every avenue that he sought to find peace of mind and from his conscience ended in disaster. At one point, he expressed, love God. You ask me if I love God, sometimes I hate him, because he was so burdened by this relentless sense of guilt that he would spend a couple of hours every day in the confessional.
If I don't have enough merits, well, then I can appeal to the saints, and this is part of Roman Catholic teaching. Works of supererogation. These are works over and above what saints need. Those graces were stored in a treasure chest in heaven.
The popes had taught that Jesus could have shed a single drop of blood and it would have been enough to redeem the world. So since he bled copiously, there is this excess abundance of merit. It's in the treasury of merit. Mary's excess merit, which was a lot, is in there. And then every saint, if they have any extra beyond what they need, that goes in there as well. And that is controlled by the keys of Peter, by the church. And so the church can make financial transfer of merit to the souls of individuals. That's what an indulgence is. It's a transfer of that merit from the treasury of merit to an individual's account, in essence, which can then take away the temporal punishment of sin in this life or in the life thereafter when they're in purgatory. And then in the most unlikely place, there is the lighting of the match that sets it all aflame.
In 1517, Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the castle church door in Wittenberg, Germany, calling into question many of the practices of the Roman Catholic Church, including the selling of indulgences. Because of technologies like the printing press, his criticism spread like wildfire.
There's no doubt that the many changes in Europe made it an ideal time for Luther to begin his theology and his new insights. They were going back to the sources, ad fontes, to the beginnings of where theology should come from. These Reformation ministers and theologians were not satisfied with the Latin Bible. They wanted to go back to the Greek and Hebrew original. And when they did that, they opened up the power of the Scriptures. And so Luther launches with this, the Reformation and the beginnings of Protestant theology.
As Luther began to study the Scriptures afresh, his first realization was that we don't just commit sins, but we are sinners. Sin is our nature.
He grasped what that meant. If I'm a sinner, then there's nothing I can do about it. There is no hope for me. But then what Luther realized is that this righteousness that is needed is what Luther tells us, an alien righteousness. Christ's righteousness. It's imputed to us.
Let's start over. Here's you. Here's Jesus. The entire sin debt of a sinner is placed on Jesus, and he dies in their place. And through faith, his full perfect righteousness is given to them as if it's their own. This would come to be called the Great Exchange. Jesus takes our sins, we receive his righteousness. And a sinner contributes nothing to this work. We are justified by faith alone.
So when you believe in Christ alone for salvation, what you're really doing is you're saying, I can't save myself at all. I deserve hell. But Jesus Christ took the hellishness of my sins upon himself and imputes this obedience to me, the obedience of the law and the obedience of his pain for sin by his suffering and death, so that God can be just and the justifier of him who believes in Jesus.
That is when he was forced to start thinking through, well, what's the foundation of this? What am I really saying? And in his famous words at the Diet of Worms before Charles, the emperor, when he says, my conscience is bound to Scripture, popes and councils have erred. What he's done right there is he has subserviated popes and councils to Scripture.
At the end of the day, this protest movement was all about authority. The Roman Catholic Church would say the Bible, the Pope, bishops, tradition, reason, they're all authoritative sources for theology. But the Reformation would say the Bible is our only rule for faith and practice. The Reformers would champion a charge to get the Word of God into the hands of the average person. And the authority of the Bible would be lifted higher than ever in the second-generation Reformer, John Calvin.
The thing that makes Calvinism Calvinism is the view of Scripture that emerged out of the Reformation.
Protestants don't worship John Calvin, and Calvinists don't think that John Calvin is sinlessly perfected, nor is he the foundation of the church. Jesus is the architect and builder and chief cornerstone, and Calvin would be the first one to say that.
John Calvin was a Frenchman born in 1509, probably wrote more than most of us will read in a lifetime. A very famous story about Calvin wanting to really find a retiring life as a quiet scholar and academic, but a man by the name of William Farel hurls a curse at Calvin and says, may God damn your accursed retirement and ease if you don't come to Geneva because we need you there.
Calvin is simultaneously the best theologian and the best expositor, hands down, who existed at the very least in the first 16 centuries of the church, maybe ever.
In 1536, John Calvin began publishing one of the most influential systematic theology works in history, the Institutes of the Christian Religion.
As he begins to write the Institutes, his one thought is, what do Christians need to know with regard to what Scripture is and what it teaches? And that was a pretty radical thing, because prior to that, the idea was, what does the church need to know and the people therefore need to follow? But Calvin's view is, what do people, Christians, need to know with regard to Scripture? Once he set the standard of Scripture alone, he was forced to come to a conclusion that the only way Scripture alone can be Scripture alone is if it is self-authenticating.
His word is the ultimate standard. Like, I know something, not simply through reasoning, not because the church tells me so, not because of a confession, but I know something is true. I can have certainty about that because God has spoken.
I still don't think people have understood how radical that is biblically, theologically, and philosophically. Scripture as your only foundation, as a self-authenticating work of God. So that when you open your Bible, your first thought as a Christian is, "Thus saith the Lord." This is the Word of God.
As the Reformed movement grew and expanded, it was inevitable that even within that movement there would be doctrinal controversies. In the beginning of the 17th century, Jacobus Arminius was positing a certain form of Reformed theology that was causing a lot of controversy.
From the point of view of the Reformed churches, Arminius is significantly revising the Protestant message back to the old medieval theology, essentially of grace and cooperation with grace. That's the very story that Luther had rejected.
The better Arminians wanted only a tiny bit of cooperation, but they thought some freedom, some cooperation was necessary for humans to be responsible.
1610, the Arminians had formulated 5 points just after Arminius' death.
Arminianism really is a confirmation of Roman Catholic theology in the form of Thomas Aquinas way back in the 12th century, where Aquinas said, "You're on floor 1 on the bottom of the stairway, and you just go up the stairs as far as you can, you do your part, and whether you make it to step 3, maybe make it to step 6, God will pull you up the rest of the way." So it's partly your work and partly God's work to bring you to floor 2, which is salvation. And today, you see, most people who claim to be Christians actually believe the Roman Catholic / Arminian theology, where you do part and God does part. In Calvinism, you have a whole different system. You can't make it up step 1 because you're a sinner. You need God to do everything.
There was a synod in Dordrecht in the Netherlands in 1618 and 19.
All of the Reformed churches all across Europe and across the British Isles reacted really as one, and they responded to the 5 points of the Arminians. And it was not just an internecine Reformed debate. The gospel really was at stake. Just after Arminius, the Remonstrants began to show their true colors, and some of them actually began to abandon anything like Orthodox historic Christianity. They began actually to become Unitarians. The fears that the Reformed had about Arminius were right, that his theology was being driven not by Scripture, but really by a rationalist spirit. In other words, what makes sense to me? And that spirit, rationalism, what makes sense to me, is utterly destructive of Christianity.
What came out of the Synod of Dort was the canons of Dort that define what we now refer to, they weren't referred to as this at the time, but we now refer to as the 5 points of Calvinism: total depravity, unconditional election, limited atonement, irresistible grace, and perseverance of the saints.
The heart of which is to preserve the Reformation gospel of salvation by grace alone, through faith alone, in Christ alone, according to Scripture alone.
Total depravity, unconditional election, limited atonement, irresistible grace, perseverance of the saints. The tulip. These 5 heads of doctrine emphasize God's sovereignty over our salvation and our absolute dependence upon Him to save us. And so we call them the doctrines of grace. These are the 5 points of Calvinism.
From the time a child in the United States enters kindergarten, he begins to be taught and to learn, if only through osmosis, a particular anthropology, a particular understanding of the nature of man. So they develop this concept of free will, which is a pagan concept. This general understanding of free will is that man is free to choose the good or evil on either side. That's a blasphemous doctrine, because that's not what the Bible teaches. The Bible tells us that something happened radically to the constituent nature of humanity in the fall.
Adam, as the first federal head of all humanity, acted as our representative. So what he did implicated all of us. We were born dead in sins and trespasses.
The mind that's set on the flesh is hostile to God, for it does not submit to God's law. Indeed, it cannot. We are slaves to sin. We are slaves to our own corruptions.
The way that Jesus expressed it is, no man is able to come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him.
So sometimes that verse is read, no one may come to me. That's not what Jesus says, it's very clear. No one can, right? We learned this in 3rd grade. May I go to the restroom? Yes. Can I go to the restroom? Well, you can, but you may not. So Jesus is saying, no one can come to me. The ability's not there.
The problem is they won't, because they hate God. It's like Joseph's brothers. They could not speak a kind word to him. Well, they all spoke ancient Semitic. Why couldn't they speak a kind word? Because they hated him. Their inability was from their hatred. Our inability is moral, comes from our hatred of God.
The picture of total depravity is the picture of Lazarus in the tomb. He's not sick, he's not ailing, he doesn't need medicine. Total depravity means that we are dead in our trespasses and sins.
We still have freedom insofar as we still have the ability to choose what we want to choose. But the want to has become enslaved by sin. That we are not just corrupted by sin, but we're dead in sin.
None is righteous. No, not one. No one understands. No one seeks for God. All have turned aside. Together, they have become worthless. No one does good. Not even one.
Most of evangelicalism has a conditional view of election. That is, God's election of His people is conditioned upon something in them or conditioned upon something that they do.
For those whom He foreknew, He also predestined to be conformed to the image of His Son, in order that He might be the firstborn among many brothers. Some people would say, oh, well, God, God looked down the corridors of time and He saw the choice that people would make, and then God said, okay, I'll choose that person because they chose me, which is completely backwards in the Bible. God is always the initiator, not merely the responder.
Unconditional election means it does not depend on the one who wills or the one who runs, Romans 9, but on God who has mercy.
Will what is molded say to its molder, why have you made me like this? Has the potter no right over the clay to make out of the same lump one vessel for honorable use and another for dishonorable use? What if God, desiring to show His wrath and to make His power known, has endured with much patience vessels of wrath prepared for destruction, in order to make known the riches of His glory for vessels of mercy, which He's prepared beforehand for glory, even us, whom He has called, not from the Jews only, but also from the Gentiles.
I remember reading this book by R.C. Sproul. I think it was 13 Things You Need to Know About the Christian Faith. And I got to the chapter about election. Then I pulled the Bible out and I went to Romans 9 and I read Romans 9. God has mercy on who He wants to have mercy. And I was sitting there like, and I'm like, yo, this is so mean. And I cried. I was mad. I closed the Bible. I closed the book. And then I remember just sitting there, like mad at God, literally, at my kitchen table. And then I sat there and I said, but no, this is grace.
When I find myself offering the challenge to Paul that's in Romans 9, I know I'm wrong. And that's what I finally had to come to grips with. I'm the guy who's saying in argument, why does he still find fault? For who resists His will? And the answer from Paul is, who are you, oh man? Who answers back to God.
It say the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. When you look at it from the human perspective, it's easy to get mad because it looks like God is unfair. It say, God, you hardened his heart. What if he would have turned away? What if he would have done this? What if he would have done that?
You see, today in America, the problem is people don't understand why God can send anyone to hell, because they don't understand who God is and what sinners we are. The real surprise is that God takes anyone to heaven, because we're all fallen, we're all depraved, we have all earned hell, and none of us have earned heaven.
He chose us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and blameless before him. In love, he predestined us for adoption to himself as sons, through Jesus Christ, according to the purpose of his will.
The basis for God's choice and election is his pure, unconditional, eternal, sovereign, one-sided grace, which we call love. There's nothing behind his love but love.
If you believe that God's love for you flowed from himself and was set upon you, not for anything in you or that you've done, it sets you free to serve him with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. We love because he first loved us. Everybody limits the atonement. It's either limited in its extent or it's limited in its effect. If you believe that the atonement is for all humanity and not all humanity is saved, then you believe that the atonement is limited in its effect. If you believe that the atonement is fully capable of saving those who are chosen by God, then you believe in limited atonement. It's fully capable, it's powerful for providing salvation for those for whom Christ died.
There is a huge and vast difference between saying that Christ actually saves over against saying that Christ accomplished the theoretical salvation that makes men savable, now it's up to them. Those are not the same thing.
I came to give my life a ransom for many. He didn't come to give his life a ransom for all, because if he did come to give his life a ransom for all, and all are not saved, then the ransom of Jesus is ineffective. The Father never grants that the death of the Son will be ineffective, but rather the death of the Son accomplishes exactly what the Father intended and what the Son intended, and that is that he would save all his elect and only his elect.
He entered once for all into the holy places, not by means of the blood of goats and calves, but by means of his own blood, thus securing an eternal redemption. It did not accomplish that on behalf of everybody, because there are people who will die in their sins and end up spending eternity under the wrath of God, sadly.
In no system of theology is there consistency in maintaining Jesus died for everyone's sins, and therefore sins are paid for once, and then sinners go to hell and they're paid for again. That makes no sense at all. Everyone that Jesus died for will go to heaven. Now, that doesn't mean the gospel isn't preached to everyone. The preacher doesn't know who the elect are, so he preaches the gospel to everyone, and everyone who truly comes to Jesus is saved and therefore is of the elect.
God will do the converting. God will do the saving. We preach the gospel, and his people, those that he has given to Jesus, they will believe in their appointed time.
The greatest difference between Calvinistic theology and all other theologies has to do with the order of salvation. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg? What comes first, faith or regeneration? Ask 99 evangelicals, which comes first? They said, well, you got to have faith in order to be born again.
They said the way that you were converted is you were out in the ocean and you were swimming and you were drowning and a life raft appeared, but that life raft is no good until you take it. When you take it, then what does God do? He brings you in. But you see, the picture is not like the picture is that we're not swimming in the ocean needing a life raft. We're dead at the bottom of the ocean. Somebody has to come and snatch us and give us life and pull us up.
When I proclaim the gospel, which is the power of God for salvation, I'm proclaiming it to people who are dead in their sins and trespasses. God empowers it by His Spirit. God, by His grace, takes sinners who don't deserve it, and He raises them to newness of life, and He saves them.
The doctrine of regeneration is possibly the most beautiful, the most precious, most powerful doctrine in the Bible.
I can't even see the kingdom of God, Jesus told Nicodemus. I have to be born again.
And that's what regeneration is. It's being born again.
Regeneration comes before faith, meaning we were completely without life and we had no ability to believe unless God first would grant to us new life.
God said, I will take out your heart of stone and I will put in its place a heart of flesh. He changes that God-hating, sin-loving heart into a heart with new and righteous affections.
By His Spirit, without the sinner's permission, He opens our eyes, He removes our blindness, He raises us from spiritual death to spiritual life. He causes us to be born again from above so that we're now alive when we were once dead.
And when that person whose heart has been changed, when their eyes are opened up to Jesus through the preaching of the gospel and the work of the Holy Spirit, they run to Him. Because He becomes at that moment the end of all their affections. He's their desire.
It's not a subtle difference, it is a monumental, even contradictory difference. Either faith precedes regeneration, in which case we save ourselves, at least in terms of the initiation. We start it, we get the process going. Or God changes us, and then we have faith.
Nothing else says it's all God and not man than irresistible grace. The time, the place, the manner, God chooses it all. And there's nothing I can do about it.
God's sovereignty, all that the Father has given to me shall come to me. And man's responsibility, him that comes to me, I shall in no wise cast out. No one has ever come to God has been cast out. So God's grace alone can turn us, yet we're entirely responsible for turning. What seems to be a tension to us, an irreconcilable tension, in Scripture comes together without any tension at all. Spurgeon said, as we run down the track with the train of our life, both things are needed. One rail is God's sovereignty, another rail is man's responsibility. But the conductor, though he sees only two rails as far as he can look, yet way in the distance, those two rails seem to come together. And so Spurgeon said, in eternity we will fully understand what we cannot grasp here.
Jesus says, for I came down from heaven not to do my own will, but the will of Him who sent me. And this is the will of Him who sent me, that I should lose nothing of all that He has given me, but raise it up on the last day. So those who have been given from the Father to the Son says, I'm not going to lose any of them. I'm going to keep them, I'm going to maintain them, I'm going to preserve them, and I'm going to raise them up on the last day.
God, through the preaching of His Word, through the discipline of the church, through the warnings of the gospel, through all of these means, God causes His elect, those who are truly justified, to persevere to the end.
Perseverance means that we work out our salvation with fear and trembling, but we do that because it is God who is at work within us to will and to work according to His good pleasure. So perseverance of the saints never means The elect are chosen and they're going to be Christians, and so you can do whatever you want to because God has chosen. That is certainly not the case, because what happens in the choosing in eternity is the redemptive historical application of that salvation that God has planned in eternity past, and part of that application means that we're changed people.
That he who began a good work in me will finish it, that I will make it to the end. Because in some sense, the reputation of the one who saved me is riding on my salvation. He will not let me fall.
At the end of the day, through all of our ups and our downs, our inconsistencies, our moments of unbelief, our backslidings, whatever the case may be, the elect, God will preserve until that final day. And praise God, because if it was up to me, I would have fallen away a long, long time ago.
I began to hear people as I traveled around the country talk about this idea of being born again. A lot of people had already been saved, but they understood it in such a way that they believed that they had chosen that themselves after careful investigation. But then as they began to read passages like Romans 9 and Ephesians 1 and many others, they began to understand things differently, that to see in the grander scheme of things actually that God had chosen them from before the foundation of time. And that began to actually encourage them and fill them with a kind of wonder that the God of the universe would regard them in such a way. And they would then come to talk about having been born again.
Jesus Christ came into the world and was appointed before the worlds began, representing all the elect of God in all the ages of history, and in our place he would not only represent us, but substitute himself for us. There is no legal fiction whatsoever. There is no sleight of divine hand. He is condemned justly and righteously by God, because he is my covenant head, who has taken upon himself all the liabilities that are mine and yours, and stood before God, enduring righteously, not unrighteously, as the innocent one, the wrath and judgment that our sin against God deserved.
They listened to this Reformed teaching, which is adult conversation, and which delves down into the text of Scripture and is driven by exegesis and sound theology, and has an awareness that the church didn't start 50 years ago, that we're in a long line of godly men, and that there is such a thing that happened in history called the Reformation, and it was followed by the Puritan era, and it was followed by the Great Awakening, and it was followed by the great Victorian era of preachers. You realize, wow, this is like night and day compared to this other stuff.
This generation is hungry for a more meaningful, a more robust theology of God, and they're finding it in Calvinism.
When I talk to people who didn't grow up Calvinistically, they'll tell me these horror stories of like having to give their lives to Jesus over and over, and like every summer they're getting re-saved. But what was that really? It was really a misunderstanding of what makes you saved to begin with and what your role in salvation is.
The new interest in Reformed theology has been the response of a younger generation of Christians saying, we want to get back to first things. We want to know what we believe and why we believe it. We want to especially understand the gospel. We've kind of moved away from the gospel. TV evangelism, the Christian political machines, and so forth. Let's get back to the things that really matter most.
Calvinism like takes the feet off of a works-based salvation, and that's freeing. There's nothing you can earn. And I think that is it's a weight off for people.
They see that Calvinism is comprehensive, warm, contagious, full of vibrance and joy, and gives real meaning and purpose to life, and people are consumed to the core of their being with the glory of God. That's something that goes much deeper than modern shallow evangelicalism.
We became obsessed. But sometimes zeal has its consequences.
It can be very easy for us to be divisive. This is the only way I can put it. And basically look at other people who are not Calvinists, like they're not even Christians. Like, I don't even know if you saved. You're not Reformed. I don't even know if you saved, bruh. Like, and that's immaturity.
The cage stage is when you are so zealous for Reformed theology that you need to be put in a cage so that you don't hurt yourself, and more importantly, you don't hurt other people around you.
It's a stage that a lot of new Calvinists go through. Sometimes I feel like I'm still in the cage stage. They come to understand these rich truths about God, but they look at teaching that diminishes God's sovereignty and elevates man's free will, and it makes them upset.
Now I'm upset that I've been in church all of my life and I've never heard of these doctrines, so I just come and pound and beat everybody I know, even Christians, with this doctrine of Calvinism, that everybody got to know it. If you're not believing this, you're pretty much not saved if you're not a Calvinist.
They're ready to use Scripture to go to battle with people who have not yet come to accept the doctrines of grace.
They'll go over to somebody in the bathroom watching, have you heard about Calvin and his 5 points?
Yes, I totally want people to be Calvinists because I want them to believe in Scripture. And I think that Calvinism is true, and I think that it's from Scripture.
Anytime somebody is awakened and changed from one position to another, they have a tendency to be extremist. I remember that I was a card-carrying Arminian for 5 years before I was converted to the Reformed faith, to Calvinism. And I was very impatient with my friends. I wanted them to see the light, as it were.
People just reject it because they hear the name and they think about a bad experience they had with a cage stage guy a few years back, and they're like, I don't want anything to do with that.
Sometimes we don't know the difference between being a prophet and a jerk. And I think that's a huge failure. And we will do better together with diversity in the midst of a fundamental unity. We'll do better together than separate.
So remember what you were like. Isaiah says, look to the pit from which you've been digged. Remember how corrupt you were, how selfish you were, how you clung to salvation by man, if you believed in salvation at all. Be as patient with them as God was patient with you.
I think the Reformed resurgence, to step back and look at it from 36,000 feet, really began on a popular level with Martin Lloyd-Jones and the establishment of Banner of Truth, which then came across the ocean. J.I. Packer in writing Knowing God, J.I. Packer writing The Sovereignty of God in Evangelism. That caught hold with a man named James Montgomery Boyce. Boyce began using these Banner of Truth books just in small group Bible study in his own church at 10th Presbyterian, and then started the Philadelphia Conference on Reformed Theology.
All throughout the 90s, Philadelphia Conference of Reformed Theology was really crucial, where James Montgomery Boyce would have men like John MacArthur, Sinclair Ferguson speak on Reformed theology.
And he had a young friend who joined with him, R.C. Sproul.
I remember when I was young having to choose whether I would go to the Ligonier Conference or the Philadelphia Conference on Reformed Theology. It was out of those two conferences that much of what we see as the quote-unquote new Calvinism today emerged.
I really point the finger to James Montgomery Boyce and to R.C. Sproul to take the truth of Reformed theology, what we would call Calvinism, take it out of the ivory tower, take it out of the seminary academic classroom, and now bring it down to the level of lay people.
You were teaching Calvinism before it was accepted in the mainstream. What drove you all those years?
Well, my conviction that Calvinism, as Spurgeon once said, is simply a nickname for biblical Christianity. I really believe that Calvinism is the purest statement of biblical truth that we find anywhere in history. And if you look at the history of church confessions, you look at the Westminster Confession, of course, the Belgic Confession, the Heidelberg Catechism, the canons of Dort, even the 39 Articles of the Church of England, the Baptist Confession, the Scots Confession. These main denominational confessions of faith, historically, were all fundamentally Calvinistic in their theology.
Coming in behind them, the extraordinary global ministry of John MacArthur with Grace to You, which is as Bible teaching as you're going to get, and it'd be on the radio. The MacArthur Study Bible, and the Reformation Study Bible, and the ESV Study Bible.
Also, you add to it the rise of so many Reformed seminaries in America, where 50 years ago, about the only one that really was dominant was Westminster Theological Seminary in Philadelphia, coming out of Old Princeton. And then we've seen a proliferation of theological institutions that have adopted Reformed theology, not just in Presbyterianism, but in the Reformed Baptist community.
Al Mohler.
Albert Mohler, or include people like Mark Dever.
I think D.A. Carson as well has been a catalyst in this movement. Tim Keller.
We're really urging the church to get out there and to recognize the need to be able to get outside the church walls to spread the gospel.
I think the first time I got exposed to real substantive theology, I was actually talking to a friend on the phone the night before. He gave me a quote: "Only one life will soon be past, only what's done for Christ will last." And I remember thinking, wow, that's really good. He didn't know where it came from, I didn't know where it came from. So when I was at work, I Googled that quote, and it brought me, the first hit on Google was desiringgod.org. He was preaching on Galatians 6:14, and he was talking about this theme of don't waste your life.
There are hundreds of you in this crowd who do not want your life to make a difference. All you want is to be liked.
I actually listened to the sermon so much, I almost had it memorized word for word. I remember the story he told at the beginning about the couple who lived in Punta Gorda, Florida with their 30-foot trawler.
Now they live in Punta Gorda, Florida, where they cruise on their 30-foot trawler.
And then the other two ladies who were in a foreign country who died on the mission field.
Ruby Eliason and Laura Edwards were killed in Cameroon. To make Jesus Christ known among the sick and the poor in the hardest and most unreached places.
And he was asking which people wasted their life. Whoa. Well, that's a really profound question.
John Piper.
John Piper.
John Piper.
John Piper is the preacher theologian of this movement.
Dr. Piper, God used to reshape the way that I see the world in terms of God, His sovereignty and might and power, His commitment to the glory of His own fame in the world, His sovereignty over the world, and in terms of God's purpose in creating me.
So Genesis 50, verse 20, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. Don't let any preacher tell you it means use. As if you're going to get God off the hook for meaning it. You, wicked brothers of mine, meant it for evil. Meant it. It, the evil, meant it. God, same word, meant it meant it. Evil meant it for good. I could just go home now.
What draws people is his passion. It's one of those things where he believes it so much, I've got to see it.
And this guy was not watering down anything. He was giving it to you raw and heavy and weighty.
What I got with Piper was not just this motivational speech about God wants you to be happy. It was really something that crushed my mind. It obliterated the way that I thought about God.
What happened at the cross was the loudest statement imaginable. If you understand Romans 3:23-26, the loudest statement from heaven imaginable, I love my glory. And in that very moment of upholding his glory, God made it possible to save sinners.
Wow, the glory of God is something that I can actually delight in, that wows me, that energizes me. And subsequently, we're willing to follow Piper deeper and deeper into the depths of Reformed theology.
Some people call John Piper the gateway drug of Reformed theology. Man, I was an addict at that point.
I can get off a plane in South Africa, in Jakarta, Indonesia, in Singapore, in Seoul or Busan, in South America, in Rio or Sao Paulo, in Europe on the continent, or in Britain, and there are people that are listening to the sermons of those men and who are identifying themselves as Reformed or Calvinistic because of those sermons. Even in the hip-hop world, you don't have to look far to find in the liner notes of hip-hop albums the attribution of the theological basis of the lyrical content to people like Piper, Sproul, MacArthur, etc.
I think the Lord has really used Christian hip-hop. There is something about the urgency of hip-hop, the way that language is used in God's sovereignty speaks to a particular demographic of people.
What Christian hip-hop has done, I think, for the tapestry of evangelism has been great because it's allowed for just an urban context and a real way to receive the gospel that's not necessarily academic, but then it is academic because it's all language arts, so yeah.
It's a beautiful thing to be able to inject it with the truth of the gospel.
The Father elects them, the Son pays their debt and protects them. The Spirit is the one who resurrects them. The Father chooses them, the Son gets bruised for them. The Spirit renews them and produces fruit in them.
Hip-hop is a really useful medium and music genre to convey the truths of the gospel. You're able to pack a lot of content into a hip-hop song.
Genesis 3:15, this verse is read. The offspring of the woman will crush the serpent's head. So the gospel was foretold then. Behold, in David and Goliath, this promise is unfolding. A vivid illustration of how Jesus began to kill this filthy Satan at the wilderness temptation.
From the beginning, it was really a natural progression because the kind of hip-hop that I enjoyed was the kind of hip-hop that taught. And so hip-hop actually lended itself to exposition, to getting into deep things and explaining things in ways that are memorable and ways that people can understand.
Who is God? God is the universe's creator and sustainer, plus the only savior, there is no one greater. He's triune, holy, omnipotent, omniscient, absolute, loving, sovereign, and righteous are a few of his attributes.
How do we know this?
Well, we know this from the Bible, where God has revealed himself. Anything else is just an idol.
What's the Bible about?
Man's complete ruin and sin and what God has done in Christ to bring us to him again.
Having a whole song on a particular systematic doctrine or expounding a passage in Scripture. So we began doing that and then found it helpful to have sermon clips of John Piper and some of the other pastors we were listening to.
The essence of sin is that we choose things, love things, like things, and do things that show we do not value God above those things.
If I had a nickel for how many times someone told me, I was not hearing these things in my church. But when I began to listen to the music, I began to hear things, and it caused me to go into my Bible and see things that I had not heard about for years.
It's just been amazing to see the Lord use hip-hop as a musical genre to be a medium for spreading Reformed theology.
I have one CD, it's the Legacy CD. It's like the first one I think that the guys put out, and I still listen to it while I'm working out or something like that, and my boys will come down and go, "Dad, this is just not right. You're just too old to listen to this."
Riding with my top down, listening to this Jesus music.
Calvinism seemed to be everywhere. We even made the cover of Time magazine. I think it's safe to say Calvinism was cool.
Do they call you pastor here or dude?
I'll go with either. You can call me Pastor Dude if you want. Most it's Pastor Mark. Well, howdy, Marcel.
Mark Driscoll is the pastor and figurehead of Seattle's Mars Hill Church, nearly 8,000 strong and among the fastest growing in America. He is a Calvinist and believes that people's fates are predetermined.
And it's your belief, is it not, that people are preordained, heaven or hell, right out of the chute, right from the get-go?
Yeah, I believe God saves people. I believe Jesus is God. I believe the Bible is true. I believe people are really going to hell. Those things in our culture are seen as crazy.
Mark Driscoll was something of an absolute phenomenon.
There was a bit of a turf war over Mark Driscoll where the emerging church wanted him and the Reformed group wanted him. And after a time, he really discovered solid Reformed theology and came to love it and came to herald it.
I named my middle son Calvin Martin after John Calvin and Martin Luther. Pretty much tells you what team I'm on, right? You name your children by virtue of your team. That's why none of my children are named Judas, for example. That's a different team.
He was publishing on a rapid basis as a young man. He was somebody who could just off the top of his head rattle off any number of different theological concepts or figures. Somebody whose church was growing at a spectacular rate in one of the most difficult parts of the country.
In many ways, Mark Driscoll was the perfect symbol for this movement. He was young, he was bold, and he said so many things that we needed to hear.
Some of you guys have been coming here for years. You still got your hands all over your girlfriend. Some of you guys have been coming here for years. You're still not praying with your wife. Some of you guys have been coming here for years. You're still single and having sex. Some of you guys will even as I'm preaching the sermon, some of you will be sitting next to your girlfriend or your fiance or your wife. Some of you guys have already whispered in her ear, "I'm sorry, I'll do better, trust me. Let's just move on real quickly." How dare you? Who in the hell do you think you are? Abusing a woman, neglecting a woman, being a coward, a fool, being like your father, Adam. Who do you think you are?
My generation wanted that. We wanted someone young and charismatic. He attracted young, smart, thoughtful, talented Christians and reached them in a way that, I mean, who else had at that point?
Pastor Mark, what is your greatest long-term fear about Mars Hill as it continues to grow?
I guess the things that I'm always worried about are for me, doing something to disqualify myself or discredit the gospel, like that would destroy me. So many people loving, giving, serving, praying, caring, that a guy in my position can really gum that up pretty easy if he becomes arrogant or unrepentant or unteachable. The real liability in the system as we built it is if the campus pastor really gets off track. Because the people know the campus pastor, love the campus pastor, follow the campus pastor. As long as he loves Jesus and his wife and his church and is doctrinally, biblically sound, everything is great. But if he gets squirrely or sideways, then we've got liability. So you and I are probably the two biggest risk factors. So it's not going to be me, it's not going to be you. We'll make that deal, okay?
The celebrityism that we see in this resurgence of Calvinism is really dangerous. And if it's not corrected, I think what we will see is what happens with every other fad, is that once the big shots die off, everything else is going to kind of die off with them. And that would be tragic.
I was shocked a few years ago when I asked in class a group of students who the most influential pastor in their life had been. And none of them mentioned their pastor. They all mentioned one of the leading Young, Restless and Reformed pastors. And it's absolutely not a criticism of the Young, Restless and Reformed pastors. It was a criticism really of the students who didn't see how their local pastor cared for them, and didn't see that as being incredibly important for their Christian walk and identities.
We need a reformation in terms of ecclesiology. When we see younger people that are very much interested in listening to Reformed preachers, on YouTube, sitting in a coffee shop on the Lord's Day, and they're not immersed into the life of a local church, they're not under authority in a local church, but they call themselves Reformed. They call themselves, a Calvinist.
I don't care if you're hearing the greatest preachers in the world every day on YouTube. I don't care if you're giving your body to be burned or offering everything you have to the poor. If you are not a viable, serving, dedicated, devoted member to a visible local church, you are outside of the will of God.
I think that if they could just be taken back into history and talk to these men, these reformers, talk to John Calvin about what church life is supposed to be, what it's supposed to look like, I think that they would be shocked.
There are a lot of guys that were sort of making it up as they went along. They were sort of inventing it for the first time themselves. And the church has had 2,000 years of rich reflections on what the church is supposed to be and do. And we're not wise to ignore the great Protestant confessions given us from the reformers and since.
Today, there are so many people that say, I believe the Bible. But what do you believe when you believe the Bible? Confessions has a way of putting the flag in the ground and saying, this is what we believe. They're not meant to divide the church, they're meant to unite the church according to what the church needs for instruction, what it needs for defense, and what it needs to testify to the world about its beliefs.
The confession itself is not our authority. The Scripture is our authority. In fact, the first article in most confessions is about the authority and sufficiency of Scripture.
While those confessions are not the standard, they represent the life and labor of believers who were filled with the Spirit of God, who spent their lives poring over this book. And so for someone to toss out the confessions as irrelevant and not necessary is to deny that he has been working in the people of God for 2,000 years.
The Reformed confessional tradition is very rich. In fact, so rich that it doesn't come just from one source or another source. There are three main families of Reformed confessions. There is the continental Dutch-German stream, which is the Heidelberg Catechism, the Canons of Dort, the Belgic Confession, called the Three Forms of Unity. Then there's the British-Scottish stream of the Westminster Confession of Faith, the larger catechism, and the shorter catechism, with some minor modifications, the London Baptist Confession of 1689. And then there's the Swiss stream, the First Helvetic and the Second Helvetic Confessions. The amazing thing is that all three of these streams are cohering together.
Those families of confessions are waiting
for the young, restless, and reformed. Not to look at as historical curiosities and relics, but to embrace as living expressions of an ancient Christian tradition.
Don't shortchange yourself by thinking that tulip is all there is. That's the beginning. That's the tiny tip of the iceberg. There is so much more beautiful theology to be discovered, and often can only be discovered in a properly confessional church.
The doctrines of grace are like a diamond. They're beautiful. We cherish them. We want to look at them from all different angles. But much like a diamond, the doctrines of grace don't make any practical sense apart from their setting. Calvinism belongs in its proper tradition, and so much of our moving forward has to involve looking back. But just because we're looking back doesn't mean we can't still make progress.
One of the biggest failures of those who have held to Calvinism historically in America is being caught up in the worldliness of the age and not being more proactive in addressing racial injustice.
There's been a real challenge for Reformed theology throughout history, and it's tended to be on the side of the powerful, of the highly educated, and has not always connected well with people on the margins of society.
It's one of the reasons why it's been so difficult for white Reformed denominations to bring in people of color. In God's sovereignty, in the resurgence, He's bringing other people to the table. He's bringing other voices into the mix, like, yo, we here. We here and we embrace these same truths.
We are not Reformed if we wear the label at all, because Luther and Calvin and Zwingli and Bucer and the boys are our heroes. If we are genuinely Reformed, it is because we believe Reformed to be a suitable nickname and adequate summary of what the Bible teaches about key points of doctrine and about a particular world and life view.
But we have a completely different perspective. We don't have the perspective of the majority culture. We're minorities, and the truth is the truth, so we're going to embrace it. But we're also, once we step into the room, we're going to acknowledge that, wait a second, we're not talking about cultural neutrality here. Like, there's a culture in this room, and it's not our culture, so we have to leap over a wall to participate in this room. But we're here. Hi. You ready? You ready for us?
I think in this country, ultimately, we're going to need a theological understanding from the Bible that helps people to understand that no matter what ethnicity they are, no matter what their background, no matter how much money they have dignity because they were created by the God of the universe and given His image. That's going to imbue them with all the dignity you could ever need. But at the same time, we're going to need a theology that absolutely humbles people in positions of power to recognize that everything I have is of grace. From my salvation to my checkbook, it is all of grace, and it all belongs to God.
I love the doctrines of grace because I love the God that they explain, and I really hope that the doctrines of grace and Reformed theology trickles down into the African American church and into charismatic and Pentecostal churches all across the world.
God is waking His people up. We are hungry for more than just lessons on morality.
My generation was content with an answer that would fit on a bumper sticker. Well, that's not true today. Those in their 20s and 30s, they want chapter and verse. They want to show how all the verses in the Bible address an issue.
Calvinism gives us this push to see God at the center of everything.
As William Ames said, the purpose of theology is to know God, to love God, and to live unto God. The most important thing we can do in our lives is to fulfill the purpose for which we were created, which is to worship God.
We gather on the Lord's Day, Sunday after Sunday. We seek to worship Him in accordance with His Word. And that means that everything that we do finds a positive warrant in the Word of God, either through command or example or principle, that we want our worship to be radically biblical.
To worship God involves us bowing down before God, prostrating ourselves before Him, and through the Word, by the Spirit, to worship Him in Jesus Christ and to give Him all the honor and the glory for His own salvation.
Sing the Word, pray the Word, read the Word, preach the Word, and then see the Word in baptism and the Lord's Supper, because as Augustine said, those are visible words. They are visible, tangible expressions of the Word of God's promises to us.
You've got to make sure that you're planted squarely and firmly and moving yourself, implicating yourself, as some have said, more and more into what God has said, so that your life more and more bleeds Scripture.
We want to investigate what is this great thing God has done for us in Jesus Christ. And the investigation in this life, inexhaustible. In the next life, inexhaustible.
Theology is designed to minister to the whole man, my head, my heart, and my hands. So when I do theology, what's happening is I'm moving myself intellectually with the facets of God, the beauty of God, the glory of God, and that engages my heart and my affections, and that helps my feet and my hands move out to evangelize others and to truly do the works of God in daily life.
All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
For I have many people in this city. They're mine. I bought them. I chose them. Go speak. My sheep hear my voice. And they follow me. So speak for me. Isn't that amazing? That Jesus gives that to you?
The only question in any generation is, do we get the gospel right and do we get the gospel out? It's not enough to get the gospel out if the gospel we're getting out is actually not the good news of the gospel. But what a tragedy if we know what God has done to reconcile us in His Son, and we know that there are a lot of false versions of it out there, but we don't do anything to proclaim that gospel to the people we care about. That, I think, is something that I'm seeing that I'm really encouraged about and excited about, bringing those two things together.
The hope that you have ultimately for the future is that God will preserve His truth, He will glorify Himself, He will continue to save sinners, and so we know that we can rest in comfort that all things work together for good to those who love God, those who are the called according to His purpose.
That's what these doctrines are meant to do. They're meant to give us a sense of great freedom, joy, humility. If it's all of God, then it means that it's not of us. To have a cranky, proud Calvinist should be a contradiction in terms. It's often not, but it should be. And if we really understand what we believe and what we're teaching, it should make us humble, joyful, incredibly glad-hearted Christians.
We standing on the word of Scripture. If you are to be standing with you, never are we gonna budge. We ain't going nowhere. We standing on the word of Scripture. If you are to be standing with you, because of His grace and love, we ain't going nowhere. Nowhere. We ain't going nowhere.
The body, soul,
a mic holder. Similar used to step peccator, bipolar. I'm hyped to show you a glass raised to those names of guys who show up in black shades and gold chains. Constantly we're conquering an audience that was hostile. Sovereignly our God would give guardians of the gospel. We start out with Augustine, a pagan indeed, till he opened Romans when a child told him take up and read. Gave rise to Wycliffe, the high-pitched Pope denier. So despised after he died, they roasted his bones in fire. This talk is not minutia, it is seriously sown from the thoughts of Luther when he fought the tyranny of Rome. Then he who sits in heaven gave us Calvin, who didn't work alone. And 27 wrote one of the greatest works the church has known. Hard knocks call him John, be prepared. When he hit his knee, believed the queen said she feared his prayers. And never glowing with Owen, who offered us a clearer lens. His father and the scholar called the father of the Puritans. And John Bunyan was not fronting beautiful feet. They threw him in the clink for not refusing to preach. But his sermons next to Jonathan Edwards could hardly rival America's greatest and elect who would spark revival.
We're standing on the word of scripture. If you are to be standing with you, because of his grace and love.
Yeah.
We ain't going nowhere.
It's real with this field, a wild display. And you can hear George Whitfield from miles away. And J.C. Rowell's files, a pile of pearls. No joke, what he wrote on holiness is out of this world. Interspersion, vibrant, strong, intense to teach you. I refer you to Shailin's song and the Prince of Preachers. And Warfield, there's a rifle to these BB guns. When liberals would reach for one, was pitiful to see him run. Crave missing links on pages covered with ink. You'll get the kitchen sink from A.W. Pink. And Martin Lloyd Jones was Sherlock Holmes with the word. Our word drops, the earth drops, but our home is preserved. Through the flesh, who can assess the course of our nature? To impress you, address the culture like Schaefer. Moving next to dueling threats like Strollin' MacArthur. And watching faulty doctrine be assaulted by Washer. I'm positive I'm drowning cause this fountain is awesome. Pound for pound, you won't go around with Malcolm and Lawson. These accolades toss them. Without grace, there's no gain. It's never been about black shades and gold chains.
We're standing on the word of scripture. If you are to be standing with you, never are we gonna budge. We ain't going nowhere. We're standing on the word of scripture. If you are to be standing with you, because of his grace and love, we ain't going nowhere.
Okay, TULIP. So T is total depravity. U is unconditional election. L is limited atonement. I is irresistible grace. And P is perseverance of the saints.
Where did that come from?
My dad taught it to me when I was little. Is that where it came from? I don't know. I think that's where it came from.
Yeah, I think that's where it came from.
Yeah.
Your dad.
Yeah, it's totally from my dad.